Hi, guys. Well, here we are again for chapter 15 of Evangeline Mudd and the Golden-Haired Apes of the Icky Nasty Jungle, written and read by moi. Oh, that's French for me. Am I speaking French again? But I thought I would say that because, see this scarf? I bought it in Paris, France. And I remember exactly the woman I bought it from. Her name was Sylvie. And it's kind of rainy and cold out today. And so I thought, oh, well, I better make myself a little cozy before I read. Anyway, I kind of like this scarf. Well, let's see. How are you guys today? I hope you're cozy too. And I hope if you celebrate Passover that it was a good one. And I hope if you celebrate Easter that it was a good one. And that everybody is full of good food today and warm thoughts. Well, in our last chapter, Evangeline landed in Icky Nasty, and she discovered that Dr. Aphrodite Pickaflee's brother, Rexy, is not maybe the greatest guy in the world. He wanted to change, at one time, he wanted to change the jungle into an amusement park. Come on. Well, let's see what chapter 15 tells us. The title of the chapter is Bababun, Bababun, Bababun. By the way, I hope you get to travel sometime. Now, if you were to hitch a ride on a bus with a young ape clinging to your neck, you might expect that your fellow passengers would sit up and take note. Could you blame them? Wouldn't you stare if the person who chose the seat next to yours was carrying an ape in her arms, as though it was a googling baby? Well, of course you would. But that was not the case when Evangeline, Pansy, and Dr. Aphrodite Pickaflee crammed their way onto the bus that was taking them from the dirt runway where the flying monkey had landed to the center of Bababun. No one paid the slightest bit of attention to them. In fact, it was Evangeline who was doing all the staring. First off, to Evangeline, the bus didn't appear to be a bus at all, but instead some fantastic mix-up of jeep, fire engine, and carnival bumper car. Its sides and back were open, and it was painted with such bright pink and orange stripes that she had to squint every time she looked at it. Has a circus come to Icky Nasty? Evangeline asked Dr. Aphrodite Pickaflee, who had paid no attention whatever to the marvelous vehicle. A circus? Dr. Pickaflee answered. Oh, you mean the jib-jib. It's our ride into town. Then there was the bird cage mounted on the jib-jib's hood. In this cage sat an actual bird, a bird that Evangeline couldn't recognize. It was a big bird, huge in fact, almost the size of a turkey, with a violent red beak. Its feathers ranged in color from that of a ripe lime to a shimmering purple. I know it's not a sparrow or a robin or a chickadee, she said. Perhaps it's a dodo. Bababun, the bird squawked over and over. Bababun, bababun, bababun. But if the outside of the bus was amazing to Evangeline, what it held inside was even more so. For the passengers had loaded it down with the most astonishing array of pigs and chickens and goats and rice and corn and coconuts and mangoes and monkeys and pineapples and palms and crates and cartons and baskets and boxes positively overflowing with all kinds of things. Things with leaves the size of tabletops and roots the size of footballs. Things that hooted and squawked. Things that chirped and crowed and yelped and barked. Things that Evangeline had no names for. The passengers themselves scuttled in, around, and over this cargo, all the while shouting and laughing and arguing with one another over who was going to fit where. The roof of the jib-jib was just as crowded, with passengers and their exotic belongings as the inside was. Passengers of all ages were hanging out the windows and clinging onto the back and sides. One man, barefoot and wearing a pair of ragged shorts and a t-shirt that said, "My son is an honor student at Bababun Elementary School," had even climbed up onto the hood and was straddling the birdcage. It was as if there were a contest as to just how many passengers the vehicle could handle, before it went crashing down over its tires onto the dusty ground. There had been such a rush to get inside that Evangeline and Dr. Pickafley had become separated, and the girl found herself jammed between an ancient grandmother and a young goat. The grandmother was smoking a pipe and had holes in the tops of her ears through which she was carrying rolled up wads of what Evangeline guessed was icky nasty money. In her arms she was cradling a pink and black pig that stared at Evangeline as if it would like nothing better than to take a chunk out of her nose. The goat was no better, and actually did nibble Evangeline's dress once or twice. Evangeline found all this remarkable until she remembered that she herself was holding an ape in her lap. Why, I fit right in, she thought. And she would have too, if it hadn't been for the heat. No one else seemed to think anything of the temperature on the bus, but to Evangeline it felt as if she were being roasted alive. Perspiration was popping out of every pore on her skin. She was soaked with it, especially since Pansy, unused to so much human activity, was hugging her even tighter. The pig especially seemed to find this objectionable, and was looking at her more evilly than ever when the bus suddenly lurched forward and began its rollicking journey to Bababun. Did my parents ride this same bus? Thought Evangeline. Did they hear the bird say, Bababun, Bababun, Bababun? Did they sit next to pigs and goats? Did they see the lady with money in her ears? And as these questions formed themselves, a new thought began to well up, not in her brain, where most thoughts come from, but in her heart. Maybe, she said to herself, maybe I'll be able to ask them myself. This was almost the first time that Evangeline had allowed herself any hope that she might actually see her parents again, or at least the first time she had allowed herself to put that hope into words. But just for a moment, sitting between a pig and a goat, she did hope. She hoped with all her might. This, by the way, was no small thing. Suddenly, the bus came to a screeching halt. A passenger, carrying an entire bunch of bananas, a crate of coconuts, 2 geese, a monkey, and a pair of fat, laughing babies, got off. The bird squawked, and remarkably, 3 more passengers who had been waiting patiently by the side of the road got on. The entire journey to Bababun was like this. Go forward 10 feet, 1 person get off, 3 people get on, each carrying a pig or a chicken or 2 chickens, or in some cases, what looked like an entire flock of chickens. By the time the bus had reached its destination, Evangeline had disappeared into a blur of leaves and feathers and fur and trotters. Well, my dear, said Dr. Aphrodite Pickafley once they had finally alighted in the center of Bababun, how did you like the ride? Evangeline pulled at her dress, which was now frayed at the edges. She wanted to say that she thought if the passengers were going to bring goats onto the bus, they should train them not to eat other passengers' clothing. But instead, she took a more practical route. Hadn't we better get to our hotel? She asked. Dr. Pickafley looked around her as if for a moment she needed to take it all in. Yes, of course, she said. You're right, my dear. Absolutely right. This is the first time I've been back here in a long time. But we've no time for reminiscing. First we'll get to our room and freshen up a bit, and then... Here Dr. Pickafley hesitated. And then? Evangeline asked. And then, Dr. Aphrodite Pickafley continued, we had better find Rexy. As the two gathered their bags and began to walk down Bababun's one street, Evangeline kept her eyes straight ahead. Earlier, Dr. Pickafley had told her that the spitting spiders rarely ventured out of the jungle. Just the same, the girl told herself, it's best not to take any chances. Pansy, who was clinging to Evangeline's back, seemed to agree. She kept her eyes shut tight and opened them only when they got to the safety of the hotel. Well, getting closer and closer, Let's take a look at what what Andrea Wesson gave us. There's a little piece of spot art. Some chickens and maybe some corn or maize or something. Some fruits. And then, I love this one. Look at that one. That's Evangeline on the bus. Do you see the pig? Do you see the lady with the money rolled up in her ears? You know, guys, it seems like I made all of that up. But in fact, many, many years ago, I lived in a country called the Philippines. And I lived in the countryside of the Philippines. And the way we got from one town to another, or from the little village I lived in to the city, was in a jitney. And that jitney I was thinking of when I wrote about the description of the jib-jib. So that was many years ago. I don't know if in the Philippines there are still jitneys, but I did go online and find this picture for you. You can see I wasn't exaggerating that much, right? Look at that. People on the top. Looks kind of fun, right? And it was fun. But it was also really hot. And I did sometimes sit next to somebody with a chicken. I'm not sure about the pig, but, you know, I'm allowed to exaggerate a little bit, I think. Well, what's the next chapter? Oh, writers do exaggerate all the time, you know. That's what we do. Oh, chapter 16, At the Icky Nasty House of Jungle Comfort. Have you ever stayed in a hotel? It's kind of fun. But I wonder what the Icky Nasty House of Jungle Comfort's going to be like. Okay, guys, that's it for today. For the day. I hope when we started you were thinking good thoughts, and I hope by the time we finished you're thinking even better thoughts. And if once in a while, you know, one of those other kinds of thoughts sneaks in, don't worry too much about that. We all get them, right? Okay. See you next time, guys. Thanks.